Good evening and hello again, everyone. I'm Tommy Tucker here to do the play-by-play along with our guest, Dr. Walter Block, professor of economics at Loyola University. Dr. Block is a member of the Austrian School of Economics. Has nothing to do with Austria, just so happens where the school of thought came about. And he believes that there should be no... Jack, bring that music up. Build the drama. He believes that there should be no government interference whatsoever. There should be no regulation. It should be laissez-faire economics, which means let the market dictate what happens. Lie, cheat, steal, do whatever you need to, because ultimately the market will determine who wins, who loses, and who survives. Want to get involved? 260-1870, toll free, 866-889-0870. Let's right now welcome in Dr. Walter Block from Loyola University. How you doing, Doctor?
Tommy, it's wonderful to be back with you.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry we missed last week, but apparently I'm on the Johnny Carson schedule now, where I work for a week and then I take a week of vacation. Matter of fact, I'll be on vacation next week as well.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, it is pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
Boy, I gotta tell you, I'm watching the TV today, and I see the president on TV talking about what GM has to do to be competitive. Firing Rich Wagner is the guy's name, the CEO of GM, and I feel as though I've gone through the looking glass, because I've gone through the president's resume, and quite frankly, I don't see anything on there. The man's a very smart man, a law school graduate from an Ivy League school, and a graduate of an undergraduate degree from an Ivy League school. I don't see any automobile manufacturing experience anywhere in there. So I'm a little put out when I see him telling an auto company what it is they have to do to be competitive and turn a profit. I'm also a little upset or a little put out, I guess, or confused when I see the government deciding who stays and goes as a CEO, because, Professor, I remember that we as a government or as a taxpayer-owned owner of a business put this guy Liddy in place. And then all hell broke loose when he decided to give the AIG people their bonuses. And I don't mean to bring all that up again. I'm just confused, Professor, is what it is, because it seems like I don't see where the ship really has a rudder. Am I missing something here or not?
Well, you should have read all of the years that Obama has spent as the head of Chevrolet. No, I'm kidding.
I missed that, because I didn't see any of that.
You're just a poor reader, Tommy.
Yeah, must have missed it.
I'm just kidding. You're quite right. He has no experience in this, and even if he did, it's not his business. If you define socialism as government ownership of the means of production, which is one way of defining it, and if you define fascism as government control over private enterprise, as in Mussolini and Hitler, well, this is a fascistic kind of a thing. Who the hell is Obama to tell a private company what to do? He shouldn't be bailing them out in the first place, and he shouldn't have any say whatsoever. I mean, the president is supposed to be a limited job, and now all of a sudden he's running industry like in the Soviet Union or in Nazi Germany, and by Nazi Germany I don't mean that Obama is a racist or a murderer or anything like. Oh, let's not get into that. But I'm not comparing him with Hitler. I'm just comparing him with Hitler and Mussolini's economic system, where he is controlling industry. And this is a shame and a scandal, and it should not be allowed to stand.
Professor, one other thing that confuses me in terms of the ship having a rudder and what direction we're going in is the philosophy of the administration, and that is, if we're going to fire executives, why don't we fire Wall Street executives? Or if we're not going to go after executives in the case of Wall Street, then why aren't we insisting that in addition to Rich Wagner, the CEO of GM, why didn't we insist that Ron Gettelfinger step down as well, the head of the United Auto Workers? Am I missing something here or not?
Well, yes, the UAW is certainly, in my view, unions are sort of like a tapeworm, and they just take over a company. But again, I don't think he should be firing him either. Although
no, I'm just saying that. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying the philosophy of it.
Yes, no. If he's going to do the one, he should be doing the other. But I would say the people he should be firing would be Ben Bernanke and the Fed, and he should be getting rid of the Fed because the Fed caused the whole thing in the first place. And he has much more control legitimately over the Fed, which is a quasi-government operation, than he does over either the UAW or GM. No, it's the Federal Reserve System, our central bank, which through artificially low interest rates has encouraged investments in housing and cars and other things that never should have been encouraged because they're not compatible with the savings, consumption desires of the populace. And that's what caused the depression that we're now in.
Okay, what role did the federal government, and Professor, just to clear it up in the listeners' ears or heads, what I was alluding to earlier is that, a couple of seconds ago, is that my mind went blank just now. So let me go on with this thought. What role did the federal government have in your mind in all of this trouble with GM and Chrysler and so forth? Did they play a role before? Because the president today seemed to dump it all. He says there was a lot of responsibility to go around, but he didn't mention any responsibility of the government. Did the government have a hand in this at all or not?
I would say the government had a major hand in this.
Tell me why.
Well, because depressions and booms and busts are not really part of the market system. They're part of the central bank, fractional reserve, Federal Reserve kind of a system. Without government interference in the marketplace, we wouldn't be having any depression or any artificial booms which lead to the depression in the first place. So he is not taking credit or rather fault for the government. He's blaming everyone else under the sun. Unions, although I'm no fan of unions, and the big three or the mediocre three auto companies and the banks and AIG and this and that and the other. The idea of the United States was supposed to be a limited government democracy with large reliance on free enterprise, and the role of the government was to serve as a referee. Now he's getting in and trying to kick the ball through the net, and who's going to be the referee if the government isn't the referee, at least in this kind of limited government philosophy?
Yeah, the point I was making before is that the deal with Ghettofinger is that this is not about economics. This is about politics. Is all we're seeing is grand political theater being played out, in my opinion, in Washington. Professor, though, when we get back to booms and busts and keeping this economics, what did the boom and bust have anything to do with GM per se, or why did that not affect Toyota and Nissan and these people as much as it did? Yeah, I guess if you're going to plot the success and failure of GM and Chrysler and Ford against the economy, why did it not affect Toyota and Nissan and pick another one, Hyundai even?
Yeah, Honda.
Honda, there you go, yeah.
It's sort of that's a very good question. It's a little bit complicated. You see, what I would say is that the artificial lowering of the interest rate on the part of the Federal Reserve System, on the part of now Bernanke, but before him Greenspan, weakened all sorts of heavy industry, cars and housing and other mines and other things like that, heavy industry. Now, let's just take the automobile industry. It doesn't mean that every automobile company is going to be in trouble because of that, just the weaker ones. So the weaker ones happen to be the ones in Detroit because of the heavy unionization, whereas Toyota, Honda, these other automobile companies have wisely moved down to the south. They're in places like Mississippi and Alabama and northern Louisiana and places like that, where the unions are much, much weaker. You see, those guys on the assembly line in Detroit are making like $75 or $80 an hour for doing not really skilled work, semi-skilled work at best. Whereas the wage rates in the South in automobiles are much lower than that. So yes, automobiles in general have been weakened, just like houses in general have been weakened, but not every city is going through the paroxysms of, say, Phoenix or Florida or California. Like in New Orleans, our housing isn't quite so bad. Well, similarly, this policy has weakened automobiles, but not every automobile company feels the pinch equally. And here I think the unions play a great role.
260-1870, toll-free, 866-889-0870. Let's squeeze in a call before we pause for the first time. Michael in New Orleans,
hey.
Thanks for calling. You're on Monday Night Economics.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
How you doing, Tom?
Good.
I just wanted to say that listen to you guys frequently, but I just wanted to say that with the socialist view, and you hear that term a lot lately, and especially in light of all what's going on with these bailouts. But I don't think either administration, they're not, we're not looking at being socialists or anything like that. We're just in an economic, we're in a crunch right now. We're in a bad situation. And even with the Bush administration and the Obama administration, we've got to stop the bleeding. So, this bailout. He had to give Wagner, he had to give the company, give them an ultimatum. Show us where you're going to need this, show us what you're going to do. We just can't keep feeding you money, and it has to stop somewhere.
But Michael, what makes you think that the administration, and I'm not going to make it about Barack Obama because he's got a whole group of people that he talks to, and I believe he's a very smart man that he brings in and he listens to what everybody has to say. But what makes you think that the administration are the ones to tell GM who should run the company and who shouldn't?
Well, what's been said, that he stepped aside. He stepped down, Wagner.
Without being forced by the administration?
Well, that's our view. That's what we read into it.
Yeah.
But that's what we read into it. But that's not what's being said. Is that he stepped aside, and I guess he was given an ultimatum. Show us how you're going. They're putting pressure on. I'm sure they are.
Well, first you said just in the sentence you just spoke, you said he stepped aside, and then he was given an ultimatum, and pressure was put upon him. So that's kind of three contradictory things.
Well, Tom, I'm just saying this. Pressure has been applied. They have to show, in other words. You just can't.
But what I'm saying, Michael,
like a child,
but
okay?
no, what I'm saying is it goes to, if he was forced out by the administration, that means the administration thinks that he can't do the job. And I'm not saying he can.
I don't think he was forced out. Maybe he couldn't handle the pressure that they put upon him to perform. Not to perform, but to show where it's needed, because there were a number of scenarios that he was saying that was going to happen. They were going to merge with one company, talking about merging with Nissan and talking about this, that, but nothing was really happening. They would show us in the next 3 days what you're going to do. He stepped aside.
Let's see what the professor thinks. Thank you for the call. Thank you for the call, Michael.
Michael does have somewhat of a good point. There's that old aphorism, he who pays the piper calls the tune.
Mm-hmm.
If the government is going to give money to GM and stuff dollar bills down the throat of Ford or Chrysler, one could make a case, they have to do it with certain criteria. They just can't blindly throw money after them, billion after billion after billion. So I think Michael has a point there. But the more basic point is, should they be giving them money in the first place? This would have made George Washington and even Alexander Hamilton and the founding fathers spin in their graves. The idea that the government is giving private companies money lest they go bankrupt, this would have been anathema to our founding fathers and to our political philosophy, which supposedly the U.S. rests upon. So yes, Michael has something of a point that if the government is giving money, then they should have something to say about how the money is used. But the more basic question is, should they be giving money, taxpayer money, to private companies in the first place? And that's a horrendous kind of a thing. It sort of subverts the whole free enterprise system, where a company sinks or swims based on how well they satisfy consumers. And if they're not satisfying consumers, they're losing money. And if they lose a bit too much money, they go broke, and good riddance to them. But if the government steps in, then that just sort of short-circuits the whole capitalist system.
All right, let's pause here for a moment. We'll open up the phone lines. Monday Night Economics. Any question about the economy or about the bailouts that are going on, about the Obama administration, about Tim Geithner, the Treasury Department? One other thing, Professor, I want to ask you about definitely when we come back is, since we spoke last, the Treasury Secretary has kind of begun to address that toxic debt that we talked about that the banks are holding. Now he's floating the figure of $1 trillion, saying that might be the initial figure that it's going to take to deal with that. Last time we spoke, I think we said maybe $2 trillion is what we might be talking about. Of course, nobody knows. Nobody knows what it's worth. The whole attempt would be to keep the banks from failing. Your approach, as I believe it, is let them go. Let it all shake out however it shakes out. To the listeners, the question is this. I heard the President of the United States today say, basically do a commercial for GM. Do a pitch that says, buy a GM. Your warranty is going to be good, backed by the federal government. Your warranty on a car is going to be backed by the federal government. Professor, is there any precedent for that at all or not?
Well,
historical precedent in this country. I've never heard that before. I don't know if I've missed it or not. Is there?
Some, and it's Obama himself. And I don't mean to single out Obama. He's no more of a socialist than Bush was, so it's not an.
No, he's not. But I'm just saying, is there a precedent?
Yes, there is a precedent, and that is that not only was Obama plugging automobiles, he was plugging the stock market. He was telling people to buy shares of stock just about a week ago.
Well, there you go.
So it's not much of a precedent, but this isn't the first time he's done it. It's at least the second time.
How does that sit with y'all? The president of the United States today plugging GM, telling you to go buy a car that your warranty is going to be backed by the United States of America. You're a taxpayer. How do you feel about that? You're already in the banking business. Now you're going to be in the car business. You're going to be backing car warranties.
Pretty soon he's going to be selling hot dogs.
I guess. I don't know, Professor. You're going to be owning McDonald's maybe. I don't know. Maybe we'll all be working at the drive-through window. As a taxpayer, are you going to be more inclined to buy a GM or a Chrysler if the government backs the warranty? And as far as, it seems to me, from what I read, Wagner was forced out. The CEO of GM was forced out by the White House. It was a quid pro quo. You do this, we'll bail you out. We'll give you some more money, at least some interim financing, some interim bailout money. Last time White House put a CEO in place, it was that Liddy guy with AIG. My question, how'd that work out for you? 260-1870, toll free, 866-889-0870. Do you think the White House should be involved, the government should be involved in any more bailouts or not? How's the whole thing working out for you? We'll be right back. I'm Tommy Tucker, Night Shift, Monday Night Economics with Walter Block from Loyola. This is the Big 870 WWL. You can also email me, Tommy at WWL.com, if you can't pick up the phone to join the show. And if you missed any of it, you just want to hear it again, listen to the podcast. Anytime, if you go to WWL.com, scroll down and click on my fat little face, Tommy Tucker is my name. Professor, somebody emailed me. Very, very good point here that if the federal government is now going to back car warranties, perhaps they'll start backing the warranties on their levies. What do you think?
That's a good one.
Ouch!
What I was thinking is during the commercial you were advertising Ray Brand Toyota.
Yeah.
Maybe you're going to be in trouble with Obama because he's urging everyone to buy GM and you're talking about Toyota.
You know what? Last time I checked, we still had freedom of speech in this country. Last time I checked.
Just be careful, Tommy.
You know what, Professor? That is an excellent point, though. If let's say Mr. Brandt, for example, he owns, and I don't mean to bring him into it. Let's leave him out of this. Let's say Johns Hopkins gets out of the hospital business and he owns a Toyota dealership. I wonder how he feels because he doesn't employ Japanese people. He employs Americans in this country. Okay. And he's got people depending on him for a paycheck and their family and kind to buy food at the grocery store. I wonder how he feels, and just talking about the competitive advantage and so forth, and the marketplace. How does he feel about the President of the United States being on a TV telling everybody to go out and buy a GM?
No, this is a horrendous, awful perversion of what our democracy is supposed to be. As I said, the idea, the philosophy is that the government is sort of like a referee. It's not supposed to pick up the hockey stick and try to knock the puck through the net because if the government does that, who's going to be the referee? And
we talked 2 weeks ago, before one of my many vacations, that if it's like an equation or like an ecosystem or however you want to make the analogy or metaphor, whatever it is, because I skipped that day in English class. But if you dabble on one side of the equation, you're going to mess the whole thing up. So there you go. It's like, okay, so we're trying to have a free market, at least we used to, and you're trying to have things work out their natural flow. We got the president on TV telling everybody to go buy a GM. Does that kind of screw everything up or not?
Oh, it does, but we're talking about precedents. There's plenty of precedent for all that stuff. I mean, public schools compete against private schools with tax money. Public libraries compete against booksellers. Even libraries now rent out, what do you call those, video things, and they compete with Blockbuster. Mm-hmm. And you have, in some places, public recreation centers, basketball courts, competing against Gold's Gym or other private concerns.
Has the federal government, though, ever warrantied a commercially sold product along the lines of what we heard today?
Well, the only other precedent, as I mentioned before, was when Obama was...
Other than last week in this administration, I guess.
Buy stocks or something, but I'm not really an economic historian. I'll bet you that Obama isn't the first one to do this sort of a thing, although no other example comes to my mind.
Wow.
Maybe some listener can call in and correct the record here.
Damnedest thing I've ever heard, I got to tell you.
No, but this is it's a horrendous thing. I just can't say how appalled I am, but there are other precedents, maybe not on the federal level, but, these local cases with libraries and schools and museums and stuff competing against private enterprise. I mean, Disney World is competing against, some government recreation kind of a center, and it's very unfair.
And I guess in the pure economic model, if you want to look at public television, they're siphoning off viewers, if you want to look at it from a commercial television station that's competing for radio, same thing. NPR competes with commercial radio stations.
That's quite right. In some countries they have government newspapers like Al Araham. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. And to us, this seems appalling. I mean, I don't like the New York Times very much or the Washington Post, but I'd hate for the government to have its own newspaper competing against them. Well, happily, we don't have that in this country, at least not yet.
Mm-hmm.
But they do have public television, and in many countries, like the BBC or in Canada, the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Company, that's a government TV station, and they're competing against private TV stations. This is really socialism. Now, previously, the caller said, well, we're not really doing socialism. Okay, we're not doing socialism of the Soviet Union type where the whole economy was socialized or fascistized, but we're having creeping socialism, a little bit here, a little bit there, buy a GM, don't buy a Toyota, and as I said, soon it's going to be hot dogs or hamburgers, buy the government hamburger because the government is opening up a store. In Canada, they had this thing called Petro-Canada, which was competing against Esso or Exxon or what have you, and these are all abominations. The government isn't supposed to be out there running businesses.
But it has been limited thus far to people that are looking for bailouts, that are people looking for money, right?
Well, not if you talk about libraries and schools and things like that, which I admit are not federal, but they are domestic. I guess, you see, I'm pushing a sort of a very radical Adam Smith kind of position that government has no business running any businesses. Mm-hmm. And there are, unfortunately, many precedents. So, we've come quite a way down toward the road toward socialism. We haven't got to the Soviet Union. But, you have to ask, well, didn't we learn any lesson from 1989 or 1991 when the Berlin Wall fell and then the Soviet Union went belly up? Do we think that we're somehow the laws of economics don't apply to us, only to the Germans and to the Russians? That's silly.
I'm shutting my fat little face, y'all. I'm opening the phone lines now, giving you the next half hour, 260-1870, toll-free, 866-889-0870. I will merely stand quietly in the back of the classroom. Lance from Jackson, Mississippi. Go ahead, you're on WWL.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
Basically, as I see it, like you said, the president didn't have the power to just say, you're fired. But, of course, he had the usual carrot and the stick concept. When he leaves, we'll consider giving you money. And that, going back, I'm sure that the CEO for GM, or the former one, we should say, is probably going to land very lightly on that golden parachute that's probably still built into his contract as he resigned away into the night. So,
But let me just and just so you understand where I'm coming from, Lance. I think the guy ran a company into the ground. I'm not a defender of his at all. I'm concerned.
He shouldn't be getting a dime, much less bus fare to the.
That's up to the board. That's up to the board to decide that, and that's also up to whatever contract he had with the board. You see what I'm saying?
I agree.
I don't know that the administration should.
These are the things these are the little quirks that'll come up. Yes, the CEO has resigned, and so they may be eligible for, in 60 days, they may be eligible for more frickin' bailout funds. Or, to me, it's a situation, let the frickin' corporation die, put them into Chapter 11 bankruptcy, restructure their debts if possible. If not, break the bloody thing apart and reassemble it as a company that works.
Lance, let me ask you this, though. Professor, I want to get your take on this, too, because something else I heard the president say today was he talked about the other bankruptcy option, Lance, as you just did, saying, we're not talking about breaking the company apart. We're talking about restructuring its debt. Well, when I heard that, it's like, okay, that's a nice phrase, restructure debt. But what it means is somebody that's owed money, justly, I would presume owed money, is going to get screwed out of it through a legal maneuver. Is that an overstatement, Professor, or not?
No, I think that's quite right. And on this business of giving money now, if President Obama wrote to the stockholders of GM and said, "Look, I'm going to give my personal money to GM if you fire Wagner," okay, fine, he has a right to do that. But he's not giving his own money away. He's giving your money away. He's giving my money away. He's giving this particular caller's money away. Who is he to give our money to GM and then push GM down our throats? It's just an abomination.
Do you think, Lance, does that bother you? And Professor, let me expand on that a little bit. And Lance, here's a question I'm trying to phrase to you. So you got the president that's giving away money that's not his. I understand he was elected president, but it's taxpayers' money. It's not his. And then he's talking about GM reorganizing and restructuring its debt, which means some people are going to get hosed out of some money that did business with GM that are entitled to this money, but they're not going to get it. So it's kind of like, well, wait a minute, Mr. President, with all due respect, you're giving away some money that's not yours, and now you're talking about a way to hose some people out of some money that they're owed, but that just doesn't seem fair to me. I don't know. Lance, am I off base here or not?
You're not off base, but, as I understand the Chapter 11 bankruptcy, and the professor, I'm sure, could tell far better than I can, if the debts are restructured to where they're paid back over time, in other words, the creditors in question will get their money. It just won't be now. And if it's a situation where it's
but let me just tell you again,
no matter what, then the creditors are going to be off the creek. But the fact is,
Lance,
whether the government's in there or not, it's going to be a situation of they're either going to fly or fall.
But Lance, depending on the size of the business, the amount of the debt and the cash flow position of that particular business, they may not be around to get their money when it finally does come around. Professor, yes or no?
Yeah, no, you're quite right. And when you say get their money, they might be getting 10 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
But the bad thing is allowing companies to be protected by Chapter 11. Why should we protect them? They're I won't say thieves. They didn't steal the money, but they have money of other people, and they're not giving it back, and they're trying to stay in business through legal shenanigans. So I'm not really a big fan of our bankruptcy laws either.
Thank you, Lance. Appreciate the call. Mike Metairie, thanks for calling. You're on WWL. Hey, Mike?
Yes.
Go ahead. You're on WWL.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment that Dr. Block had made about getting rid of the Federal Reserve and their contribution to having caused the problem.
Okay.
And the reality is that probably can't happen in the political landscape, to get rid of the Federal Reserve, but alternatively to require the Federal Reserve to include asset prices in the way it calculates inflation, to put the responsibility on the Fed to monitor asset prices in the future to prevent an inflated asset market, specifically the housing market. Is that feasible, and is that something that's getting talked about?
Well, I agree with you that it's very, very politically infeasible to get rid of the Fed, but I'm not limited by what's politically feasible. It's sort of like I see myself, I hope you won't mind me saying this, like a doctor with regard to cancer. Now, it's very unfeasible to get everyone to stop smoking cigarettes, but still, cigarettes causes cancer, and the doctor who's worth his salt should say it. He shouldn't say, well, since it's infeasible, we should tell people to smoke less or use filter tips or whatever it is. To me, that's sort of like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. The infeasible but correct view of the only way to get out of this depression and not to cause new ones is to get rid of the Fed, which is the cancer of the economy. Now, is it feasible? No, I agree it's not. Ron Paul's got this idea, well, if we can't get rid of them, at least let's monitor them, let them not have so much secrecy. But, again, that's a very far second best, very far back second best. Look, it won't be feasible if no one talks about it, and if we talk about it, then it'll become more feasible. we shouldn't be limited by what's politically feasible. We should be limited by the truth. And the truth of the matter is that the Fed caused every depression we've ever had, and the Fed will continue to cause depressions, and what we ought to do is get rid of it and so solve where once it stood.
Mike, did you see the interview on 60 Minutes?
No.
With Bernanke?
No.
Scott Pelley did the interview, and 60 Minutes is usually, that's you're having a bad day if 60 Minutes shows up to interview you. This couldn't have been more. Professor, did you see it or not?
No, I didn't see that.
I don't think this could have been more delicately handled. It was almost as though the script had been worked out beforehand. No follow-up questions, nothing but softball questions, which makes me wonder. I don't know what kind of agreement had been worked with CBS. I don't know if this is supposed to be some kind of propaganda piece. I hate to say that, but it almost seemed like it because there were no hard-hitting questions. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, my thought process here is just that we try to start monitoring asset prices in lieu of getting rid of the Federal Reserve. That if we can keep asset prices in comparison to average wages, that we don't end up with another bubble and then another burst.
But, Professor, then you're messing around with the equation, right?
Yes, absolutely. I don't think that the Fed or anyone else should be dictating asset prices. Supply and demand is what's supposed to be dictating asset prices. And
I agree, but we do monitor inflation, and part of inflation was missed in this.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I misunderstood you. I apologize. Yes, I agree with you that the CPI and all these indices of inflation are very problematic, and I think you put your finger on it. I'm sorry.
Does he sit in the front row, Professor?
Yes.
Very good, Mike.
Man an A.
You get a gold star.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks for the call, Mike. We'll be right back. More Monday Night Economics. Professor Walter Block, our guest, Dr. Walter Block from Loyola. I'm Tommy Tucker, back in a flash on the Big 870 WWL. Another edition of Monday Night Economics. Dr. Walter Block from Loyola is our guest, and we're taking your phone calls. Mike from Thibodaux, go. You're on WWL.
Hey, good evening, Tommy.
Hey.
Dr. Block.
Good evening.
My question was this. I totally agree with your statement how the Federal Reserve is actually the problem of all this mess. And is it actually such a crazy idea if educated people can realize this, that perhaps the administration is bringing down this economy on purpose in order to institute a world government and a world currency?
Wow.
I mean, we've got Geithner telling China that he's open to a global currency a week after he told the nation that he's not open to it. We've got people like Henry Kissinger saying that we should use this crisis in order to create a world government that Obama would be great to be the leader of.
Well, I don't reject all conspiracy theories. I think we have to consider each of them on their own, but this one does seem a little out there, but I'm willing to consider it. I don't think it's so far out there that we shouldn't consider it. I do, however, favor a world currency, and at one time we did have a world currency. It was called gold. And sometimes silver. And if we went back to the gold standard as a world currency, I think that would be good. But what we mean by a world government currency is pretty much the opposite of that. You see, the whole reason you had a central bank in any given country is to get each of the banks to inflate at the same rate, because if one inflated too much compared to the other, it would lose out in negative balance of payments between banks and clearinghouses. Well, you have a similar sort of situation with regard to countries. If you have some countries that are hard money and other countries that are profligate with their money, like the U.S., well, then we get our dollars devalued, and that looks bad. And if we had a one world currency under a world government, this would solve problems from their point of view. From our point of view as consumers and citizens, it wouldn't solve anything. It would be a horrible thing to have a world government. So I think you have a very interesting point. But in order to have a conspiracy theory go, in my view, you need more than just saying it. You need some sort of evidence for it. And I think this would make a very good research paper or a very good article.
You've got the
See, Mike, there you go. Now you got homework.
Yes.
That's what happens when you bring something like that up.
The British Parliament met last week, and the councillor said that he is totally open to bringing England into the European Union, and apparently like 90% of the population of England is against it, and he still said that he wants to switch to the euro bring England into the European Union in order to create a world government where America wouldn't be the leader anymore.
Thank you for the call, Mike. That's why I just sit in the back in color. I don't say anything because I don't want to wind up with homework. We'll pause for a minute. Be right back with Dr. Walter Block. Monday Night Economics, Big 870.
Economics can be fun.
Exactly, WWL.
This is WWL.
Well, apparently there was some traffic or something, Professor. The class was late arriving tonight. Now we're just overflowing, so that was very nice of you to agree to stay until 9:30 and address their questions. And you, the class on hold, if you leave, I'm going to start writing out detentions. So just hang out, stay on hold. The professor's agreed to stay until 9:30. Chip Biloxi, go ahead. You're on WWL with Professor Block.
Hey, Tommy, you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine, Chip.
All right. Hey, I was calling real quick to find out if we get the employee discount with GM from now on. Do we get the presidential discount?
Well, we're all employees. I mean, we all own it. We should get the owner's discount, I guess. I don't know. Professor, what do you think?
Well, I think that's a very good point. Another thing that just occurred during the break here was an announcement by our man, President Obama, calling for volunteers. You know, I'm not against volunteers, but what about commerce? I mean, commerce is what makes the country go, and he seems to be going away from commerce. We should have volunteers. We should have, in effect, state-owned or state-controlled automobile companies. He's moving us toward the USSR, and I don't much like that.
What do you think about that, Chip?
I'm in the military. So
you're in the military?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, it affects me personally. I know the taxpayers pay for my income every month, and
yeah, but Chip, we don't mind that. We always have. That's what government does.
Yes, sir. I understand that.
Yeah.
But my fear is, we keep giving all these bailouts to these companies, and like Circuit City, they failed. No bailouts there. But my question is, does we give out some money where basically the U.S. goes belly up?
I think this is a very good point. The limited government libertarian philosophy is that government has one role, and that's to protect its citizens. And to that end, it has three legitimate functions. One is armies to keep foreign bad guys off of us. Second, police to keep local bad guys off of us. And third is courts to tell who the good guys and the bad guys are. And that's pretty much it, or at least that's the very radical limited government libertarian view. And I think we respect the military, at least when they protect us, instead of going gadding about the country and invading other countries. That's a different issue. So I certainly support a very strong Coast Guard to make sure that no foreign enemies attack us. But what Obama is doing, and again, it's not just Obama, it's FDR, it's Bush, it's Hoover, the two Bushes, even Ronald Reagan. Same did Ronald Reagan when he was governor of California. The budgets in California rose. When he was president, he had great free enterprise rhetoric, but the U.S. government budget rose. So it's not a Democrat or a Republican thing. It's both of them.
Got to follow the money. Hey, Chip, thank you for your service to the country. We appreciate your call.
All right. Thank you, Tommy. Have a good night.
You bet. Have a good evening. We'll pause for a moment. If you're on hold, stay right where you are. The professor has graciously agreed to hang out with us until 9:30 and answer your questions about the economy, about what's going on in Washington. Unless you don't have any questions, then you're way ahead of the game, I guarantee you that. Monday Night Economics continues when we come back. I'm Tommy Tucker, Big 870 WWL. Going out to some 38 states. Our guest, Dr. Walter Block, professor of economics at Loyola University. The professor has told you what he thinks about the president's economic plan thus far. Professor, we have calls on hold from Iowa, Plaquemines Parish, Kenner, Alabama, West Wego, and Slidell. I'll let you pick, Professor. Where do you want to go first?
Iowa. That's furthest away.
Let's go to Iowa. Quentin in Iowa. How you doing? You're on WWL.
Hello.
Hey. Hey.
My question for the professor is, what type of economic model does this new move follow when what we're basically seeing the president do is set us up and tell us to buy GM products, but I'm a former automotive employee that's laid off because basically our jobs went away. All of our Tier 3 suppliers have moved out of the country because they can do it cheaper from Korea and Japan and China. So where are we getting the money to buy these new cars? And what economic model does that follow, as far as the consumer side?
Could I ask which company you work for, or if you don't want to mention?
Well, to tell you the truth, in my time, 16 years in the automotive industry, I've worked for all of the big three, as well as Honda, and I did some small stuff for Toyota, but I ended with Chrysler.
Right. Were you, just so I can ask, Quentin, were you selling? Were you manufacturing? What were you doing?
We were manufacturing.
Okay, manufacturing. All right, Professor.
Well, let me answer this in two ways. First of all, there are still domestic U.S. companies, Toyota, Honda. They're doing pretty well in the South. It's mainly the Detroit people that are not doing as well as they could.
But when you grab that window sticker,
wait, hang on one at a time.
Original content manufactured outside of the U.S.
Wait, hang on, Quentin. Let him talk, and then you talk.
Okay, I apologize.
But let's take the more basic question that this gentleman is asking. Suppose that all U.S. automobile companies went belly up, and that all cars were made in Korea or Japan or somewhere else. Because I think what he's really getting at is that we should not have free trade. We should have protectionism. We should have tariffs against the importation of cars or car parts.
Is that what you're saying, Quentin?
Well, I'm more saying just to go back to the way things were before NAFTA.
Professor?
Well, I think what he is saying is that we should have protectionism, that we should make sure we have a U.S. automobile industry, and I just don't see why. I mean, if the market says that an automobile could be made for, the same quality automobile could be made for, say, $20,000 in Korea and $30,000 here, well, everyone who buys a $20,000 automobile now has $10,000 extra to buy other things.
All right, then what would Quentin do?
Well, he would help produce these other things, whatever they are. I don't know, pianos, plumbing, I don't know, cancer cure research, whatever.
So you're saying that demand would be shifted then, and in the pure economic model, Quentin would be trained to do something else somewhere, somehow?
Yes, precisely. Look, we don't make bananas in this country, so if at one time we made bananas and we had, say, banana protectionism, and now bananas are made in, I don't know, Costa Rica somewhere, well, what happens to all the banana employees? Well, we can now buy a banana at 1/10 the price that it costs to make a banana in a hothouse in the United States, so we now have 90% of our banana money, and we can spend it on other things. But you know, I once gave an example that if I came up with a cure for tooth decay and all dentists were unemployed, would this be a horrible thing? And my answer was, of course not. Now the dentists no longer needed to do dentistry work, can do other things, and we'd be much richer. Well, if we can get other people to make cars at 2/3 the price that we can make it at, that's how you get rich. And if we insist on making horses and buggies, or making cars at $30,000 when we could have had them at $20,000, that's the way you create poverty. So I'm very much against the tenor of this question. It's a call for protectionism.
But let me jump in here for a second,
Sure.
Professor, if I might.
Sure.
So that's on paper. What you just said, I get the theory, and I understand how that'll all work out in the long run. But Quentin, you're dealing with it in your life. How old of a man are you?
I'm 38.
38. So you've gone from 6 different car companies trying to catch on. You are by trade an auto plant assembly
Actually,
worker.
I was
right?
a manager in a production facility.
All right. So what now? According to the professor, so okay, the jobs have gone. You're supposed to. The economy is. Somehow your skills are supposed to shift to another area. Is that right, Professor?
Well, look, let's take the case when automobiles first came in, and suppose it was this 38-year-old blacksmith who was putting shoes on horses. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden the demand for his services is no longer needed. So what? Should we prohibit cars from coming in and make jobs for horseshoe people that are not needed? No, that's silly. Let the blacksmiths and the horseshoe people and the horse trainers and the bridle makers and the saddle makers and all of those people whose tasks are no longer required, let them go to Detroit in the early days or wherever it is and make cars. Well, it's the same thing if we could, ship out our blacksmithing industry to the foreign country. No, this is very much the opposite of what Adam Smith said in his book, The Wealth of Nations. The way you get to be a wealthy nation is by getting stuff cheap, not by artificially protecting high-cost work. Now, look,
Professor,
when you became...
hang on one second, Quentin. I'm going to give you a chance in a second, Quentin. Go ahead, Professor.
You're a 38-year-old man, and you've invested money in your own training. Well, under capitalism, people who make investments, including investments in human capital, have to bear the risks. you know, when you were doing well in this industry, you didn't give us money, or you shouldn't have given us money, and now that your services by hypothesis are no longer needed. Actually, it's not true. You can come down to Alabama and get a job in the automobile industry here. But let's suppose, just for argument's sake, that there were no more cars made in the United States. Well, tough on you. Just as we shouldn't be bailing out General Motors, we shouldn't be bailing out General Motors workers.
Well, wait, let's see now if that premise is true. Could you go to Alabama and get a job if you wanted, Quentin, in the automobile industry or not?
I doubt it seriously.
Have you tried?
I have to pick up and move. I have a farm.
There you go.
There's a lot of things that would be involved.
But there you go, Professor. It goes to, I guess what I'm trying to get at here, is it because, and I think this goes to the very crux of it, is it because we as a nation don't want to adapt and adjust as we did maybe in the days when the horse and buggy went away and those newfangled automobiles came in? Or are we less willing to do that than we once were? Professor, what do you think?
Yes, I certainly think so.
What do you think, Quentin?
And I also think, if I could just add this, that if the big three, or I now call them the mediocre three, if they went belly up and there were no jobs in Detroit, and if we didn't have unemployment insurance and welfare, some other company, whether it's Chinese, American, or Canadian, it doesn't matter, would come into Detroit and see a whole bunch of very skilled workers and offer them jobs not at $80 an hour, but maybe at $15 an hour. And there would be no unemployment.
I was going to agree with you on, Professor. It's a grossly inflated cost that the makers are paying their workers, and I understand that. I personally, Iowa is a right-to-work state. I have never been a union worker, so I've never seen that $30 an hour paycheck. Now, granted, I was salaried, but none of my people made that $30 an hour paycheck. They got paid $12 an hour.
I'm not talking about 30. I'm talking about 80. That's what they make on the assembly line.
I couldn't even imagine my guys getting that.
That's crazy.
But, Quentin, to get back to your thing, because I think what a lot of this comes down to is, let's take my case, for example. If I don't want to work at night here at WWL, I can pack up and move my family to Seattle. I can go to Dubuque, Iowa, Des Moines. I can go to any market I want. But I got to be willing to sell my home, which is paid for, and I got to be willing to move the city that I was raised in and that I call home. I got to be willing to make some adjustments. I'm not willing to do that.
Actually, I just sold a house about an hour and a half away from where I'm at now 2 years ago to come here.
To do what?
They closed down a manufacturing facility I was working at, and I came to a place in southern Iowa that made car parts, and I went to work there.
So you have moved a little bit, but you made some adjustments 2 hours away, but you're not willing to try to – not willing, I don't mean to make it sound as though you're lazy or anything. You're not – it's not worth it to you economically or sociologically to make the move to Alabama to get back into what it was you were doing.
Well, I grew up in Augusta, Georgia, and my actual first job out of college was at an automotive facility outside of Atlanta. And that company moved me up here. So it was a matter
I guess what I'm getting at, though, is your problem really that the jobs, the third tier, whatever you said, jobs have gone overseas, or that the jobs aren't available, or that the jobs are available, you're just not willing to do what it takes to get one?
Well, I'm more than willing. I put in applications online. I call places. I've gone numerous places.
But didn't you earlier tell me you didn't want to move to Alabama?
Well, that's just a matter of, yet again, in a slow housing market, I'm going to have to sell a huge farm. And there's nobody going to spend the money.
Well, the bottom line is that
I took a loss on my first house, and now I'll take a loss on my second house.
Yeah.
Well, blame it on the Fed.
I don't blame anybody, but, you know.
Well, I blame the Federal Reserve System.
Thank you, Quentin. Good luck. What part of Iowa are you calling from? Quentin?
Sir?
What part of Iowa are you calling from?
I'm calling from Shenandoah, Iowa.
Well, good to hear from you, Quentin. Good luck, okay?
Right, have a good one.
Thank you. From Iowa to Westwego we go. Albert, thanks for calling. You're on WWL.
Hey, how you doing,
Good.
Hey, yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. Also, I'm a graduate Loyola myself, class of 2001.
Oh, go Wolfpack. Woohoo!
I've had a business minor. But it seems to me, Tommy, I don't know, maybe it's just me. It just seems like, it's no disrespect to anybody, but it seems like to me, everybody's become super paranoid now about socialism. they're throwing the word socialism around like it's a rag doll, you know. I mean, we're nothing like Professor Jay talked about, like what Russia was and Soviet Union was in the past. I mean, if you think about it.
Well, let me jump in for 1 second here, Albert. I'm looking at the clock. I don't even go by the word socialism or anything like that. They had to cover Newsweek back in January. None of that means anything to me. What means things to me, or what means stuff to me, is when I turn on a TV and I see the President of the United States serving as a pitchman for General Motors, and I see him saying that the United States is going to be the guarantor of a warranty on a freaking car. That means something to me. When I see Barney Frank posturing on TV saying that this little beady-eyed guy saying that, you know what, mob rule and peer pressure should indicate and should guarantee that these AIG guys, they shouldn't take their bonus, and that contract law doesn't mean anything in this country, which is what he was saying. That frightens me because, you know what, I'm 51 years old, and I've learned a long time ago that both the mob and your peers can turn against you in a heartbeat. And when they do, guess what? I want that contract to stand up for my rights, because if it doesn't, we got nothing. And you know what? Everybody says that Wall Street and the economy, all of that has to come back based on confidence. My friend, all of that is nothing but contracts. All of that is based on contracts. So if Barney Frank and Chris Dodd and Charles Grassley and people of that ilk, if they think they're going to make an emotional political decision to do away with contract law in this country, you may as well flush Wall Street down the toilet. You may as well put a Virgin Records superstore, well, that's going out of business. You may as well put a big Toys R Us and TGI Fridays and whatever the hell else they got in Times Square on Wall Street. Because if you do away with contract law, nobody is investing in anything. Professor, am I wrong or not?
Oh, I give you 100 plus on that. That was magnificent.
That's all I got to say, Albert. I don't care about labels. I don't care about socialism. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing coming out of Washington, and it's scaring the bejeebers out of me. You have the floor now, Albert. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I do understand that.
And it's got nothing to do with President Obama. This goes back to Bush.
Yeah, exactly. Really, all this really started when Bush, with the TARP money and all that, really invested in these companies. But my main issue is that, look, these companies took the money. They asked for it. They took the money. They made the promise, hey, this is just a bailout. This is just a loan. The government now owns part of the company. We'll pay you back this and this and this. Well, now they start to belly up and go under now. Well, there may be some issues with Obama doing what he's doing, but the thing is, I don't think he's out of order, because they took this money and the American public owns part of this company now. Not just that company, other companies too that they bailed out. So in a way, we look at it, a lot of people don't agree what he did. I'm not a full 100% of what he did also. But the thing is, these companies took the money. Now you have screwed it up. You're still in trouble. You know what I'm saying? Your stock's going down the toilet, everything else. Well, somebody has to do something. Somebody has to step in and do something. And my thing is, it's just the situation is what it is now. It's come to this brink because companies are...
So wait, let me. I'm just watching the clock, and I want the professor to weigh in. Yeah. My thing would be, I think somebody needs to do something, and I think the president needs to step in and stop giving them money. That's my thing, because I don't think he knows anything about running an automobile corporation. I think he knows about taking care of being good stewards of or at least he should know about being a good steward of the taxpayers' money, and as a result, he should stop giving them money. That's what he knows how to do. That's my thing.
Agree.
Professor?
I agree.
Okay.
No, I think that's the key. Given that he's giving the money to them, there can be a case that he should, he who pays the piper calls the tune. There is some sort of case for saying that he should have some control over what the recipients of the money are doing with the money. But that leaves, there's a big elephant in the room here, and the elephant in the room is, should he be giving them money in the first place? And the answer is no. And I don't see anything wrong with labels. I mean, socialism is a perfectly good label for abrogation of contracts. All words are really labels, so socialism seems like a perfectly good word.
Well, I guess, Professor, I meant it more from the approach. I wasn't starting with socialism and working back. I was starting with the actions, and then wherever it leads, I don't care.
Those actions are socialistic.
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
And socialism is just a short one-word indication for, the 100 words that you use to describe the abrogation of contracts and how important that is.
Albert, does any of this bother you at all, what you see coming out of Washington at all?
It does. I think how he did it, it seems like he's almost a bully in a pulpit, doing it, and that that's kind of scary. Because like I said, I kind of agree with, I don't know if I want Washington, really running a car industry too, because they can't even run their own business.
So what I'm saying, here's the thing that drives me nuts, and I'll let you get back to it in a second, Albert. We laugh. We've been telling jokes. We've told so many jokes about Congress that now when a comedian wants to make fun of another comedian for being inane, they'll say, boy, that Congress, what a bunch of clowns. So now that's become a joke in and of itself. So now, why would we automatically assume that these are the men and women to tell a private company how to be efficient and to be successful? Am I missing something, Albert, or not?
No, I agree because I think Katrina was a prime example of the company not being efficient. I mean, he signed a big bill for $68 billion, and probably 30% of it just wasted, off this nonchalant stuff. But we're just at that point. I mean, it's a scary thing. But something has to be done, and he's taking a huge risk. He's taking a huge risk.
He is, Albert, because let me tell you something. It's real at some point. You know what I'm saying? This is not the campaign trail, and I do respect the man for this. I honestly do. He's not wishy-washy. He's got a vision. I don't agree with what he does, but he's got a vision, and this is going to be his heritage. This is going to be 100 years from now. They're going to be talking about him. You know what I'm saying?
I agree totally with you, Tommy.
Albert, I heard him say a thing today, too, that just is one other thing. I'm glad you said that, because he was talking about the floods and the hurricanes, and that when I believe a city suffers because of economic disadvantage or something, somebody needs to be there to make sure that they help. So to deal with the red tape, he created another federal organization to deal with the red tape. Am I the only one here? Am I to quote the Bible, am I a gong banging in the wilderness or a voice screaming, whatever it is? Am I the only one hearing this or not?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right.
So we have too much red tape and we have too much bureaucracy, so we're creating another government agency to deal with that.
Yes, we should be getting rid of government agencies, not adding more government agencies. And speaking of Katrina, FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers are still in business, even though between them, they're really guilty for the killing of some 1,500 New Orleanians.
Exactly, I agree with that.
At least under free, well, you should, because you went to Loyola and you got a good education.
Albert, I'll give you the final word. Anything else?
Yeah, like I was saying before, Tommy, exactly what you just said. I think maybe in a way Obama might be a little naive, like you said, creating this other government entity to deal with the red tape. I think he hasn't really been in Washington long enough to know that he's just creating probably more mess, you know what I'm saying? So maybe he'll rethink that what you just talked about, and go, oh, maybe this might just make it a little bit worse. I'll pull back, because the way government is functioning, it's just not a functional. It runs smoothly right now, so he'll double think about. Well, he'll think twice about that.
Your phone's breaking up, Albert. Thanks for the call to Flannery Plaquemines. Thank you for your patience, sir. You're on WWL.
I appreciate it. I thank you for taking my call, and it's good. I just got back from 2 months in Greece, and I turn on the radio, and you got somebody on talking about abolishing the Fed. That's a good thing. I completely agree with that.
Tell me what Greece has to do with that, or you just wanted to throw in that you had a vacation and we didn't?
Yeah, I was. I haven't been listening to your radio station in 2 or 3 months.
I got you. How was Greece? I got to know. I'm not going anywhere. How was Greece? Nice?
I was not. I've been there 7 times, actually. I find a good thing. I just keep going back to it.
Yeah. I'm going to Avondale later on this year.
Well, my colleague at Loyola, John Levendis, who might be on this radio program in a week or 2 or 3, is also a Greek economist.
Oh, well, good. Very good. So what do you want to say, Flannery? Go ahead.
I did want to say one more thing on the Fed. When he said in agreement that talking about it is good, a few callers back, they were saying that it was something that was not realistic, and the professor said that talking about it would make it more realistic, or people would know. It put it. I think the debate is controlled, and it put it out there on the table that it would be something that would be in people's minds.
Yeah, more politically feasible.
Yes. And I didn't want to focus on this, but I did want to say the guy with the conspiracy theory a little while back. The one thing you might want to check out is the Amero to unite the currencies of. I was just saying there's a move for that to unite the currencies of Canada, U.S., and Mexico into one book. There was I think Jerome Corsi came out with a book on it last year entitled The Late Great USA, The Coming Merger with Canada and Mexico. It talks about the proposed Amero monetary unit.
Yeah, Flannery, I'm glad you said that because, Professor, you said that there used to be one world currency, meaning gold. What would be the difference between that and not a thing of any real substance like gold?
Fiat currency.
Well, yeah, a fiat currency.
Gold.
Thank you.
The difference is that you can create fiat currency out of thin air and create inflation and create the business cycle.
That's what I mean, the real difference as far as...
Whereas you can't create gold. And as for the United States, Mexico, and Canada amalgamating, I'd rather see Quebec leave Canada. And there's even a movement of some states, I think Vermont and New Hampshire, some of those states, South Carolina, which has done that once before, to threaten to secede from the U.S. if the 10th Amendment isn't respected. And Obama seems to be playing havoc with the 10th Amendment.
And for those that don't know, Professor, the 10th Amendment?
That those things that are not specifically set out in the Constitution for the federal government are left to the states. And the federal government is, someone mentioned the word bully. Well, I think the federal government, and again, not just Obama, but all the presidents, including Reagan, are being bullies.
And the Congress.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, some of these states are now legalizing medical marijuana, and the federal people are putting them in jail even though they're obeying state law. Well, that's secession. So I'd rather see us, instead of going to one world government or amalgamating U.S., Canada, and Mexico, I'd rather see 20,000 countries. Right now we have about 250 countries. Let's have a whole bunch of Liechtensteins. I think we'd get along a lot better that way.
Probably make war a lot less likely, unless, although China would probably wind up taking everything over. Yeah.
One last comment.
Sure.
You had said like several times about there's some things we agree on, like the Fed, and it makes money out of nothing all the time, and that's perfectly wrong. I completely it creates all our messes, but economically. But when you said the gold standard, I'm not sure. You sound like you quoted Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, and like right out of Austrian School of Economics, like Murray Rothbard, Henry Hazlitt, those guys that like the gold standard. But I wanted to ask you about something from the left, from an alternative, not necessarily Hilaire Belloc and G.K. Chesterton, which you come from Loyola, you're a Catholic university, and this is usually what's presented as socialism versus capitalism, but this is the distributist school of economics. Most people probably aren't too familiar. It's more of a Catholic or a medieval thing, but it's the reason I bring it up is I think if something like the Fed to disappear, unfortunately, it would probably have to involve some kind of violence or something huge rather than just a process, because the powers that be wouldn't allow that to happen. Hilaire Belloc, he's similar to a socialist view from this point. He views the capitalism is leading to the reestablishment of slavery. That's the thesis of his masterpiece, The Servile State, published in 1911, I think it was. But what I wanted to ask you is, what's your to the extent you're familiar with it, what's your opinion on G.K. Chesterton and Hilaire Belloc? Because they believe that the capitalist historians have lied about the Middle Ages and the Byzantine times. It was a lot better that people had it back then. Everyone, the small man on their own means of production. People weren't it. They were the serfs and the peasants had worked their way up to the spread of they were slaves during the Roman and pagan times, and capitalism has led us back towards a slave movement. I think that's been a lot of people that capitalist groups, so John Birch Society, whatever, capitalist Wall Street Journal, just anything from the right, when they mention Hilaire Belloc, they misrepresent him, when actually he's very much in disagreement with the capitalist view violently, if you take time to find out what he's saying, because it's the traditional older view, which is pro the small man.
Flannery, we got to move on here. So
let me try to answer your questions. You very eloquent man, and you make several points. I don't know that I can do justice to them all. Let me first say that Hazlitt and Rothbard were personal friends of mine, and I am a great admirer of theirs. Secondly, I don't at all agree that capitalism leads to slavery. Maybe fascism leads to slavery, and a lot of people confuse the two. They think that if you favor free enterprise, you're a fascist, which is a big mistake. So I'm not a real big fan of the medieval period, although it had some good, but I certainly don't believe with Hilaire Belloc that capitalism leads to slavery. I think capitalism encompasses freedom, the very opposite.
All right. Thanks for the call, Professor. I know you got to go. Let me do one more here because this gentleman's been waiting for a long time. Chris, North Shore, thanks for calling. You're on WWL.
How you doing, Tommy?
Good.
Okay, I was listening a while ago, and when the gentleman called in from the automotive where he was laid off.
From Iowa, yeah.
And Iowa, okay. And the comments that were made to him were basically, doctor, no offense, but that kind of thinking was destroying the middle-class family. Because what you said was, what's wrong with a company going overseas to find a car or vehicle, make it 20 or 20,000 or 10,000 less, and selling them for 10,000. Well, the companies are not doing that because I don't know of any cars coming overseas and coming back selling 20,000 less. What's going on is this man out of a job, and now the middle class is slowly deteriorating because companies are outsourcing jobs to overseas, making them less and returning a profit, which is turning the CEOs and all these big corporations, even with the tax breaks, the incentive plan, whatever the government's giving them, they're not what the trickle-down economics story would do. They are basically hoarding their money. Well, now it's turned into a major problem, and that way of thinking, because that just bothered me, was like, well, learn something else. Well, there's only so much in this country. The population is growing, and there's only so much this man can do. I empathize for him because I'm not in that field myself. But, I mean, I look at it like this. If somebody takes my job, goes to Mexico with it, what pays our employee less, which they're making more profit, but not turning it into, giving it to the retailer, to the customer. I mean, that doesn't seem like, well, that's not helping the country. That's helping another country and helping a select few of people. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand very, very well what you're saying, and I disagree about 180 degrees on that.
Well, tell him why, Professor.
I certainly will. I don't believe that the middle class is in trouble because of free trade. I think the middle class, to the extent that it's doing well, is doing well because of free trade. Look, I outsource a lot of things. I outsource my groceries to Walmart. I could grow my own groceries. See, the idea is this idea that we should be self-sufficient is highly problematic from an economic point of view. Look, if it makes no sense to ship U.S. jobs over to Mexico, does it make any sense to ship Louisiana jobs over to Oregon? Does it make any sense to outsource New Orleans jobs to Shreveport? Does it make any sense for New Orleans to ship out jobs to Metairie? You see, the logic of this is that we should each be self-sufficient. And if we're each self-sufficient, we'd all starve. Imagine if you had to make...
Wait, hang on, Chris. Let him finish and then you go.
Imagine if you had to make everything that you needed to live, food, clothing, shelter, you didn't outsource anything. The world would die. The reason that the world can now support 6 billion people is because, thank God, we have free trade. One of the reasons that the U.S. is as prosperous as it is that it's a gigantic free trade zone. Early in our country, in our history, various states would set up tariffs against other states. Maine would set up a tariff against New Jersey and South Carolina against Virginia. And instead of having one free trade zone of 13 colonies, you'd have 13 different little countries, each of them self-sufficient. That would be disaster for the middle class. So when your job gets shipped off to Mexico, or when your job gets shipped off to the ether because somebody invents something that makes your job no longer needed, that just means that labor is freed up to produce more things than we could otherwise produce. No, I think you're barking up the wrong tree. Free trade is the way to go if we want to have some prosperity.
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, you said the United States we're not prosperous, and that's because jobs are being... Right now, we're in one of the biggest deficits we've had since, God knows when. So that tells you alone right there, if you take jobs away from Americans and send them over to Mexico, that's taxpayers being taken out of the system and being a burden on the system. So
I'll tell you what,
it helps the CEO and the corporation, but as far as the tax base and the economy, because the man who lost his job can't go to Walmart. He can't go to to Kmart, can't go to the Winn-Dixie and spend money because he doesn't have it now. And just a select few who are hoarding this profit now, they're the ones spending at very few places where you got 100 million spending at 100 different places, you got 12 spending 12 different places. I mean,
I'll tell you what, I've got a homework assignment for you if you're willing to take me up on this. Go to Mises.org, MISES.org, and look up free trade there and read a little bit about free trade. And then maybe next week or the week after, when I or one of my colleagues is back on the show, you can call in again and we can discuss free trade again.
Okay, well, yeah, I appreciate that. But like I said, you said that's why the United States is so prosperous. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of things that show us we're not prosperous right now.
But you know what, Chris? Let's all do that. I'm not going to be on vacation next week. We'll do it again the following Monday. MISES.org. We'll do it, okay. Professor. Thank you for the call, Chris, and we'll get right up on it. We'll discuss it. And I know we didn't get a chance to do it last week because of vacation and so forth. Because I got to jam these vacations in between work. It's the American way. Thank you, Professor.
My pleasure.
Appreciate your time. You bet. A pleasure as always. Professor Walter Block, Doctor of Economics at Loyola University.